that's another really, really good wide receiver that Oregon has gotten here over the last couple of years. And then I kind of laid it all out, and I'm like, we are entering a golden age of Oregon wide receiver play. Now, I'm going to get into multiple angles and certainly why I feel that way. But to get to that point, we have to look to the past, because to get to a golden age, it has to be the peak kind of your history at a specific position. And I believe that is what will most likely happen over these next couple of years, considering the amount of just insanely talented wide receivers that Oregon is bringing in. Like, I know Ohio State recruits on an uber elite level, but outside of that, Oregon is recruiting the wide receiver position, I believe, better than anybody in the country. There might be a handful of schools that might be in that conversation with the Ducks, but they are doing it on an extremely, extremely high level right now. But let's set this up talking about the past. Because when you think of Oregon and the success that they've had, what do you think of? When you think of Mike Bellotti, when you think of Chip Kelly, even, Mark Helfrich had maybe a little bit of success over there. Even Mario Cristobal and the success that happened there. The first thing offensively that's going to come to your mind is not wide receivers. It's not. It's running backs. It's running backs. I mean, you can go down the list. You can go to LaMichael James. You can go to Kenyon Barner. You can go to Royce Freeman. You can go all the way back, right? There's so many great running backs in this era that have really powered the success. DeAnthony Thomas, there's so many. I'm going to forget so many. I'm going to leave out so many, but you get the general idea. CJ Verdell, 17 of the past 20 seasons, Oregon has had a 1,000-yard rushers. They are in the conversation of that RBU type of conversation. And trust me, I grew up in the state of Wisconsin where it just seemed year after year there was a new running back. There was a new running back. There's a new running back. And it seemed like that same trajectory has followed Oregon as well. Maybe that's why I gravitated to Duck football as well. But the point being, Jonathan Stewart, there's another one that I certainly left out as well. Okay, now that point's been made, let's move on to the next thing. Wide receiver isn't exactly a position that over this time of successful Duck football that has produced a lot of great players. They haven't recruited at it. They didn't recruit at an ultra high level. And some of the best players that they produced, weren't exactly the highest level NFL draft picks. Let me give you an example of three fairly recent guys that I think are maybe towards the top of the food chain when we talk about Oregon wide receivers. Jeff Mayle, right? He had a 1,000-yard season during that 2010 national runner-up year. He was recruited as a corner. You look up at his recruiting profile. Has the old CB there. So, we talk about recruiting, which we'll talk about here in just a minute, but this guy recruited on the defensive side of the football. Jeff Mayle went undrafted, played 4 years in the NFL, and had 9 total catches during his time as a pro. Sammy Parker is probably one that you really think of as maybe one of the top receivers in Oregon football history. He was a 4th-round draft pick. So we're talking about guys that are towards the top, and we're not even talking about the first 3 rounds right now. We will in just a moment, though. Sammy Parker played 6 years in the league, just over 1,500 yards. You got Josh Huff. When I played NCAA 14, tore it up with the old Huffster. But when we're talking about recruiting, he was a high 3-star, low 4-star type of recruit. He ended up being a 3rd-round draft pick, 4 years in the NFL, just over 500 yards. So these guys aren't uber-high NFL draft picks of the previous era. They weren't uber-high from a recruiting rankings and a talent-wise coming out of high school perspective. That might have something to do with Chip not exactly loving recruiting, but certainly being a good developer when he comes on campus. And, of course, the structure of the offense. There's a lot of reasons, certainly, to this as well. But for those of you on YouTube, I got 2 tweets on the screen that I think really exemplify what exactly is happening in terms of talent acquisition at the wide receiver position that is forming this golden age of Oregon wide receiver play. One from Max Torres of Scoop Duck, and one from myself. So we got to talk about, since Dan Lanning has taken over, Oregon has 3 5-star receivers. I think in previous eras of Oregon football, a 5-star wide receiver really wasn't on the radar. You had Jurion Dickey, who was the number 28 overall player in 2023. Gatlin Bair, who was a 24 guy. We know he's a 2-year mission. He's going to be a 26 here eventually. He was the number 30 overall player. Decorian Moore. I think when Chip Kelly's on campus, when Mark Helfrich is on campus, even going back to Mike Bellotti, I don't think they would have ever dreamed of a player like a Decorian Moore, which these are, once again, we're getting multiple examples of why this is a true golden age of Oregon pass catchers. Number 5 overall and a 5-star plus, dare I say, generational type of prospect that Decorian Moore certainly is. Oregon, to put it into perspective, in the years, and some of these guys are on the Oregon roster now, but in the years before Lanning got there, you look at the 21 class, Troy Franklin was the number 43 overall player within that class. Pretty good prospect. Pretty darn good prospect. Dante Thornton, who ended up at Tennessee, was number 71 overall. So, hey, 2 top 100, 2 top 75 overall receivers. That's pretty good. Yeah, but when you look at what Oregon has stacked up within the last 3 years, they're certainly taking it to another level. Kyler, Casper, Justice Lowe, they were 4 stars in the 22 class, but none of those guys were in the top 150. Micah Pittman was top 100 in 2020. You take some of these guys. You take a Cooper Perry, who was he was maybe in the 180. Cooper Perry was 182 in the 25 class overall. You look at a Dylan Gresham in 24 at 176. In previous eras of Oregon football, those would be maybe some classes, maybe not other classes, but in some, those might be one of your top wide receivers of a 2-year span or a 3-year span. But now we're talking about, I mentioned those 5 stars. Now we're talking about this year where Messiah Hampton and Jalen Lott are both guys that are sniffing the top 100. I mean, we're talking about a guy like a Jeremiah McClellan, who was a top 70 overall player that they flipped from Ohio State. And the list goes on and on and on as well. They are just taking it to another level. But why? Why is this happening? Okay, I talked about this history. They didn't really have a precedent of great wide receiver play. I think one thing that really goes underrated when we talk about Dan Lanning is just he hits frickin' home runs when it comes to hiring assistant coaches. I think Dan Lanning's journey has a lot to do with that. And it's been documented. He's talked about it during interviews of how far he had to drive just for GA jobs, and the support certainly that his wife and his family had during his coaching career and the grind that he had. And I think he looks for those same guys that have that same motivation and that same drive that he has to succeed. Right away, he goes out and hires Junior Adams. Look who Junior Adams recruited at Washington. Pretty darn good. Pretty darn good. Right? And then he comes over here, and we talked about Troy Franklin before. Not a Lanning era recruit, but what happens? Okay, what's another example of why this is a golden age? You have the best overall season from an Oregon wide receiver. Most receiving yards in a season and most receiving touchdowns in a single season, and that was in Dan Lanning's second year. So he goes out and gets Junior Adams. It's clear that there is true development going on at the wide receiver position. Okay, you had, regardless of coordinator, you had Kenny in 22, you had Stein starting in 2023. Okay, and then you factor in Junior's great recruiting ability as well. We talked about Decorian Moore earlier, and I've just rattled off the names that they've been able to bring in here as of late. Okay, and then now we circle back when Junior Adams, I think it's a good sign that your program is entering into a successful period at wide receiver when the Dallas Cowboys come knocking and say, yeah, we want your wide receiver coach. And then he becomes their wide receiver coach. And now Dan goes out, hires a guy in Ross Douglas that did a really good job in 1 year getting his receivers, playing them up towards the higher level, towards the ceiling, certainly of their abilities, having the top passing offense in the country at Syracuse. And Ross Douglas is proving his recruiting chops with what he was able to do, finishing the job with Hampton and certainly getting commitments out of Jalen Lott as well. Those two guys in this class, I think, are very, very, very good players. And then you see my tweet on this for those of you on YouTube. 2027 might be like the peak, the platinum, the diamond of the golden era. When I kind of looked at this possibility, I'm like, this is insane. Let me explain to you what the 2027 season could look like from the wide receiver position. Could is the key word there. We know there's this thing called the transfer portal. But 2027 could see the following. The last/junior season for the following. It's going to be the last season for DeCorian Moore, Cooper Perry, Dylan Gresham, Jeremiah McClellan. It would be the second year, Gatlin Bear, Messiah Hampton, and Jalen Lott. Oh, and then you throw in a second year of an absolute freak at tight end in Kendre Harrison as well. Dante Moore won't be on campus. Not sure who the quarterback would be in 2027, but they might be. I got a pretty good idea that they'd put up pretty good numbers considering that. I know a lot of people look towards 2026 as that possible championship season, but man, 2027 could be maybe the best passing offense that we've seen. Appreciate it, folks. We are truly entering a golden age of Oregon Duck passing attacks, and it's because of those weapons on the outside. Recent history has proven to us you need elite level playmakers on the outside to be in that championship conversation. Look at 2019 LSU. DeCorian Moore has been compared to a guy that was on that team that put up big numbers. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson was on that team, and he's one of the best receivers in the NFL in the world right now. Look at 2020. Devontae Smith won the Heisman at Alabama. Look what they did through the year. I know you had some of the Georgias and the Michigan and the line of scrimmage certainly as well, but look at what happened last year. Like Oregon in the Rose Bowl, it's a perfect example. They saw it firsthand. They could not stop Jeremiah Smith. You look at Emeka Ibuka. You look at some of these other weapons. It led Ohio State making those plays to a national championship. You need to be able to have those special playmakers that can take over a game on the outside. Having multiple of them, Ohio State has found out, okay, you got those types of guys on the outside, and many of those guys on the outside, you're going to be really tough to stop. Welcome to the Golden Age, folks. Sit back and enjoy.